And people are going to be telling stories all evening, so I thought I'd start out with one of mine, which is when I was a very young lawyer, someone told me to call Tom Chambers. I was like, I can't call this icon. I mean, it was scary, actually. So I called this office here and was told that he was in trial, and I was so relieved. It's like, okay, I can say I called him. And the next day...
Sounds like fun.
The next day, I get a call back from Tom Chambers, and I said, well, I was told you were in trial. And he said, well, I am, but we're on a break, so I'm returning your call. I nearly fell over, truly. And eventually, this room right over here became my office, and Tom mentored me, as he has so many lawyers, and I continue today to look up to him. And I want you to know that that is not a reference to my height. So, Justice Chambers asked me if I would do a video that's a retrospective of his career. He told me he wanted it to be very short, and he told me that he wanted this really short video. And so I wrote the script, I rewrote the script, and I spent an entire day at the editing bench, and then I emailed him and I said, look, it is not my fault I've received so many awards, so many accolades, been president of so many different organizations, had so many kids, so many grandkids, and so many interesting hobbies. So it's going to be a little longer than you thought, Tom. But anyway, here is a retrospective of Tom Chambers' career in a very compressed period of time. I hope you enjoy it. Here is Chief Justice Barbara Madsen, who is going to talk, I'm sure, about how much she's going to miss Tom on the bench and some other things. So, Justice Madsen.
Thanks, Lori. And I told her I didn't think I'd need an introduction in this group, but I wasn't really sure. So, Tom, thank you first for your trust in having me speak. Let's hope it's earned. I want to start by sharing an observation that Tom made when he was first elected to the court in 2000. What he said about that was, only in America could this happen to a kid raised behind a gas station. Immortal words, Tom, but nothing compared with what Tom considers to be one of the blue ribbon events in his life, which occurred, as I understand from his blog, in 1948, when his father put in a restroom in the gas station and he no longer had to use an outhouse. For those of you who don't know, Tom blogs, and if you're interested in more of the Wapato humor that Tom has brought to the world, you should go to his blog and read his timeline. His timeline points out things like when he became a member of the middle class, which was another blue ribbon day for Tom. One of these I guess I'm going to talk just a little bit about the last 12 years because there's so many people here who've known Tom in different capacities. But the last 12 years, Tom has been ours. That is to say, one of the court family. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think what you learn from Tom, if you read his timeline and the blue ribbon events of his life, what you understand is that we could not have the kind of compassionate man that we have in Tom Chambers had he not grown up in the way that he had, to understand how hard you have to work to get ahead and that you have to take risks and that life is an adventure, and don't waste a moment of your time. And that's really, I think, what Tom has brought not only to the opinions that he writes. He has compassion for people because of the way that he was raised, and he has a complete generous spirit when it comes to the people that he's colleagues with. And that is what we have enjoyed so much on the Supreme Court, those of us who've had the honor to share the spot with Tom Chambers. So I want to talk just a little bit about Tom in the Supreme Court. Now, those of you who think about the Supreme Court, you might not think it's a really hard job. But I will tell you that it is no walk in the park. It is not an ivory tower, though I know my husband frequently tells me that I live in an ivory tower. We don't live in ivory towers. It's tough. The decisions that we have to make are tough. So sometimes things get tense in the conference room, and I have instituted a sort of an order of the court, if you will. If you raise your hand, you get to speak. If you don't raise your hand, you're not supposed to speak. So we'll be in the middle of a very tough case, and Tom will raise his hand, and I'll be thinking, oh Lord, what's he going to say? But he's always a surprise. He's not going to tell you what he thinks about the legal issue. He's going to tell you about the time that he hot-wired his father's car and he drove to Seattle because he had a hot date. Or he's going to tell you that in Wapato, a really fun thing to do was to float watermelons down the irrigation ditches. Or he's going to tell you about the jalopies that he used to raise on the back roads of Wapato. Now, why do I mention this? Because what happens in the conference room when Tom raises his hand and tells us the story is that the temperature in the room goes down. And I think of all the attributes that Tom has brought to the court, it is that ability to be a friend and a colleague, fight hard for what you believe, and still at the end of the day have that humor and that generous spirit that he is willing to share with everyone. So Tom, you have been a marvelous colleague. You have taken us places that some of us did not want to go. I will have to say, I am among those who sometimes didn't want to go where you wanted to take us. Case in point was when Tom decided that he was not going to recuse on any cases while he was having any of his medical problems. He decided he was going to be a full member of the court. And so he said that he was going to Skype in to the Supreme Court. Well, it's kind of like parachuting in or something. I don't know. It was not a place that I was comfortable in going. But the more that Tom persisted, and the more that I decided that I had to get with it, the more that we collaborated together, and we found a way to make Tom a virtual justice. And so Tom became the first justice, I think, in the entire world to be virtually Skyped in to oral arguments in an appellate court. That is a place I did not want to go. I have to tell you, part of the reason I didn't want to go there is because I figured the next request for Skyping in was going to be from Hawaii, and it was not going to be for a really good reason. But it has just been amazing to have Tom as a colleague, because Tom's view is that, or it appears to be, that life is way too short not to have a good time. So you walk into the conference room one day and he has a video of snorkeling with the fish, or he has a new blog posting about some adventure at the NASCAR races, and he just exudes that love of life that is just contagious, and all of us who've had the privilege to serve with Tom are better people because of it. Tom is not, and the Supreme Court are not the only folks in the judicial family who adore Tom, frankly. He has reached out to so many judges in the legal system, been generous with his time and his expertise, has attended so many of the conferences and the opportunities to mingle with other judges, that when it turned out he couldn't make it to the last judicial conference, there was a huge swell of voices that wanted to wish you well. And so I have brought with me some of their well wishes. Yes. Tom, you have made really important contributions in the law, and I think those who read your opinions will be the judge of just how far you've taken us. But I think most importantly, that your legacy is that you have left more humanity in the law than there was when you first came, and that's what I think counts the most. So congratulations in your retirement, and thank you for being such a generous client.
And our next speaker is Dean Kelly Testi, who actually needs no introduction either, but she was dean of SU Law School and then jumped ship, and I'm an SU grad, and it took me a while to deal with that. But as dean of the University of As Dean of the University of Washington School of Law now, she has brought her passion for diversity and our continuing search for equal justice, and has infused that area of the law in our legal community with so much energy. So, Dean Testi.
Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate the kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to gather with you. And Justice Chambers, it's especially an honor to be with you this evening and to be able to both say happy birthday and to also honor your service to Washington State and with the court. I know that we have a number of speakers tonight, so I will be brief, but I wanted to start by saying that I'm often asked the question, Kelly, we know that you care a lot about justice. We know that you want to make a difference in the world. Why do you work in education? Why not become a public interest lawyer? Why not serve maybe in politics or on the court? And that answer is always an easy one for me, because I feel in education what you do is you are a multiplier. That the students you bring into your institution, you can't begin to imagine when they come to you the kind of difference that they're going to make as they go into the world. And you can't begin to replicate the kind of difference all those students can make once they decide what their passions are and they start to work for justice in their own ways. And so it is a true privilege to see what happens when your students do go into the world and the difference they make. And I have to tell you that we could not be more proud at the University of Washington School of Law than to call you a Husky. We could not be more proud. For over 110 years, this law school has stood for academic excellence, for being devoted to the rule of law, to using law to achieve justice. And in every aspect of your career, you have demonstrated those values and more. So today, among your friends and your colleagues from so many parts of your career, we want to let you know that we are so honored that you're one of us, and that we're so proud of your career, that we thank you so much for being an emblem of public service throughout your life in so many ways, and that we wish you all the best as you move forward. We have a wonderful bag of great Husky goodies for him that I've already given him. We would never want to miss a marketing opportunity, of course. But Justice Chambers, seriously, one of the things that we most wanted you to know tonight is that we all believe that when one understands that law must be among life, that law exists in a field of pain and a field of death, and also a field of love and of passion, and the wonderful things that connect us as humans. You understand that. You've always understood that and exhibited that. And so we congratulate you on your career and look forward to continuing to work together, and are so proud that you're part of UW.
And this is another guest who truly needs no introduction. Our next speaker is Paul Levera, who told me that when he founded the Damages Attorneys Roundtable, he asked Tom Chambers to be one of the original members because of Tom's superior trial skills. So please welcome Paul Levera.
Thank you, Lori. Actually, while we're here to honor Tom, it's universally true that there is no great man that does not have standing behind him a great woman who is the wind underneath the wings, and for whom she should get the Lifetime Achievement Award, not him. 45 years of endurance, Tom. Think of that. Well, Tom emailed me and asked me to talk about his lifetime achievements in the law and said I had 2 minutes. I wanted to say that's more than enough time, but I knew that wouldn't be appropriate. Here's somebody who has been passionate about life. If I can digress from the law for a moment. Motorcycles, race cars, parachuting out of airplanes, for God's sakes, Tom. Scuba diving, as I said, traveling to unique places. Your life has been a true adventure. And for a kid out of Wapato, Tom, who has done everything you've done, we're all really proud of you. It's been great. Now let me just tell you a few things. In addition to his ability to stand on his head and drink a beer, he does have other qualities. He graduated from the University of Washington Law School in 1969. He practiced law for 30 years. But Tom didn't really practice law. Tom lived the law. The thing about Tom was that he was someone I admired for his organizational skills, his determination. He was a very determined lawyer. But more importantly than that, Tom had this unique skill of walking away from a trial and not leaving enemies. You know, for me, friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. For Tom, he made friends with them. I'm thinking of Pat Cook, God rest his soul, who, you know, you and I tried cases against and became a great friend of both of ours. But that was Tom's unique ability, the same thing that the justice just spoke about. I should say, I guess, I hate to do this, Tom, that he's also had some great awards. I mean, huge damage awards, as well as doing pro bono work. And he has a history of whiplash cases as well. Tom is an all-around lawyer and has been a great lawyer and someone that we've all admired for his trial skills. And I was looking at the awards you were given, Tom. Lifetime Achievement Award from the Washington State Bar Association, Distinguished Alumnus Award from the UW, Outstanding Judge of the Year from the King County Women Lawyers, Outstanding Trial Lawyer of the Year from the American Board of Trial Advocates, Outstanding Trial Lawyer of the Year from the Washington State Trial Lawyers Association. And he's been president of 4 organizations. Now, Tom was the president of the Washington State Bar Association, which is pretty extraordinary. They let a plaintiff's lawyer from Wapato. It's amazing. He was the president of the Damage Attorneys Roundtable. He was the president of the Washington State Bar Association. He was the president of the American Board of Trial Advocates. He was admitted to the American College of Trial Lawyers. No small achievement. About 1% of the lawyers in this state are allowed to be invited to join the organization who have demonstrated their skills as a trial lawyer. And Tom did that when he was still young. I want you to note that. Tom has also. Are you applauding for the young part? Tom has published over 100 articles. And I suspect, Tom, that you have lectured probably twice that many times at legal seminars all over the place. He's published a 2-volume set on a trial handbook, which is an amazingly good publication, still being used. So, to wrap this up in the 2 or 3 minutes you allotted me, I had a lot of good things to say, Tom. Tom is the small town guy who made good. He has been a person of skill, integrity, and a person that everybody admires for his overall accomplishments. And Tom, we're all very, very proud of you.
First worked in this building, there was another woman working here named Karen Kohler, and I think that that's a familiar name to most of you. And Karen was also mentored by our dear friend Tom, and he took her under his wing and started teaching her trial skills, and all I can say is, boy, she picked up that ball and ran with it, didn't she? So, Karen, here you go. Quit trying to grab the microphone away from me.
So, in 1989, I was an 8.5-month pregnant defense lawyer. In deposition, the day before trial, Tom videotaped his own depositions, perpetuation, and the phone rang. You remember this? Oh, you will. The phone rang, and he leaves the deposition. And he comes back in and he says, that was Lee Kraft, who was my supervising partner, and he says, I think the case is going to settle. And I said, huh? He says, I think we should call off the deposition. What do you think? I said, well, that's your call. It's your perpetuation deposition. Do you remember this now? He calls off the deposition. Everyone goes home, and he says, you want to have a drink? We go to the kitchen. We have Diet Cokes. And he proceeds to tell me basically things like, wow, that was really smart that you did a notice of trial attendance of the plaintiff, because I had sent her to Colorado or something to be, and he told me his trial strategy for the next half hour. That night at about 11 o'clock, Lee Kraft called me and said the case didn't settle. See you in court. Now do you remember? We came to court, I will never forget it, and all he did was just smile and shrug, and the lesson that I learned was, you just go with it. And working for Tom, what he did was, basically, he hired me. After all, I was a defense lawyer, and they didn't know what to do with me, having children and not wanting to work full-time. Tom said, well, I want you to be an associate. And I said, well, I'm going to have children, and I don't want to be a full-time person. He says, okay. And that's how, I always thought my first mentor and my best mentor would be a female. And it wasn't. It was Tom Chambers. My kids, Sheila, are you here? We used to have to argue, he made us argue every single request for a medical exam. We had to go to court and fight every single, we would tell them doctors are biased. We had to argue. And with Sheila, I would bring the little baby carrier, and Sheila would watch my baby while I argued the motions down in King County. And Tom would come knocking on my door and say, can I come in? And there'd be a blanket over me while I was nursing a baby. So this man was progressive. And I absolutely just have nothing but amazing memories about him. So if I had to say the one thing that he taught me, which is absolutely the opposite of what I heard happen just now about the whole access to justice thing, he always would say, the lesson was, don't tell me you can't do it, just do it. I mean, that was never debatable. I'd say, we can't win this motion. It's like, just go do it. Right? Who worked here? Who worked here? Does everyone agree he would never allow us to argue with him about anything? It was like, just go do it. I don't care. Just go do it. And I have taken that to the gazillionth, as you may know. I take no for an answer, and we are just going to go do it. So thank you for being such an inspiration to me, and I hope everyone knows that the legacy that this person created is going to live on, and for all of us souls who worked in this beautiful building. Thank you.
And when I was a young attorney and my knees were knocking together, Tom would just nonchalantly walk through and go, "So try it." So just go down to the courthouse and try the case. So that's what we do now. And certainly Karen learned that lesson, and so did I. Our final speaker is Bill Bailey, and Bill has some stories to share about Tom's mentoring. And as you all know, Bill is a superb trial attorney who has made his mark with very complex cases and doing storytelling and being very imaginative in how he presents a case. And so he's got some things to share about being mentored by Justice Chambers.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everybody. When I think of all the miles that Tom Chambers has logged in our state, there are thousands of lawyers that he's mentored, whose life he's changed. I feel very blessed to be one of those people. But our first meeting was not promising. It was in Judge McCutcheon's court. I was a young assistant attorney general defending workers' comp cases. Tom was trying a motorcycle case involving serious injuries, and when he looked at my juror information form, a dark cloud of worry descended on his poker face, and he tried every which way to get me to take myself off of the panel. Nothing doing. As an aspiring young trial attorney, this was my lucky day. I had a ringside seat at a Tom Chambers trial. But the good news for Tom, he ran out of bullets. He couldn't get rid of me, but I was number 13. I was the alternate. So the most nervous I have ever seen Tom Chambers is when I showed up at court in the morning and when I came back at lunch, because one juror was habitually late. And so Tom was pacing back and forth, like at the Woodland Park Zoo before they did the new upscale monkey house, wondering if this late juror was not going to show up and he was going to have the dreaded assistant attorney general be on his juror. He got lucky. The late juror continued to show up, but I didn't take it personally. I was teaching trial advocacy at University of Puget Sound, and so I called Tom a couple of months later and said, "How would you like to come down and talk to my trial advocacy class?" which was from 6 to 8 at night. And Tom, as we all know, is a tireless worker. Well, he got in the car, he came down, and that was the beginning of our mentorship and our friendship. I want to shift to one story that really shows the transformational power of Tom. And I can still see this like it happened yesterday. It was at the Smith Tower, the Chinese room. It was called Whistler then. I still call it Whistler Seminar. And the psychologists tell us that emotions are contagious. And I got infected with full-bore Chambers that afternoon. Because there was no podium. It was just Tom in the room. And he looked at all of us and said, "You have to fight for your clients. Don't just go through the motions. Every case, every client deserves the best that you've got." In in a moment. I didn't even drink the Kool-Aid. He just zapped me. And I was totally transformed, but it was a bit of a sleeper cell because it didn't come out fully until about 6 months later, when I had clients by the name of Elaine and Jack Mollo that were getting jacked around by State Farm. And I didn't want to get into a fight with them. It was over $1,500. Even as a former public defender, that was sort of fell below my standards. But in the back of my mind, seriously, folks, what would Tom Chambers do? Is there any doubt what the answer was? Go after the bastards. Full board. So I did, but there were times when I wondered, maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew. Well, I reached a point where I needed some experts. So I called up Tom. He was at this very building, and I said, Chambers, this is all your fault. I am in a major battle with State Farm. They are trying to kill me. They're bringing out all the heavy artillery. Will you be my expert? Will you testify that it's just a scam what they're running and that I provided value to State Farm? And he said, of course I'll be your expert. So it went on from there. But that I wrote an article on the case later in the Trial News, and that was at the beginning of it, that Tom Chambers was who gave me the inspiration, the spark to take on a fight that I didn't know I had in me. Yes, indeed. And when Tom ran for the state Supreme Court, his worst challenge was to survive a morning meeting every week with Lem Howell and me giving him advice. But one of Tom's themes really represents why he's one of my heroes. One of his themes was the justice system should level the playing field for all people, for all citizens. And that is wired into Tom's DNA. And I don't know anyone else who has worked as quietly and as consistently to empower human beings. And one of the things, many things I look at Tom and admire, I've taught for 30 years now. Most of the classes are more female than male. I see that as a very good thing, but I look at the practice, and other than the judiciary in a few places, women still don't have the positions they deserve on their merit. And that's bothersome to me, particularly as the father of two daughters. But I look at Tom Chambers, and very quietly, without making any public sort of fuss about it, you look at who he's mentored. Part of leveling the playing field is grooming the stars of the future, the next generation. So, Tom, you have really blessed my life. And when I strip away all your accomplishments, at your core, you are a race car driver. With an ornery tenacity, never give up, and at times when I felt like giving up, seriously, I thought about you, what would Tom do, and you have given me strength. Thank you for being such a great mentor.
That's why we all have these little wristbands to say WWTD. What would Tom do? Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tom. Happy birthday to you. And we have one other gift for Justice Chambers. Many of us worked and lived, actually, in this building, and one of our compatriots is now living in Hawaii, and she sent this over for you today. Happy birthday.
I know that it will be difficult for you to understand what I said. But what the hell? I'm with friends, right? Lord, thank you for that wonderful videotape and for your friendship.
Thank you.
I want to thank Justice Madison, Lynn Heston, Paul, Ella, Helen, and Bill, who all took liberties with the truth. But I appreciate it. I am a very, very fortunate man. I have wonderful friends. I've enjoyed a wonderful career in the law. I hope I have shared my enthusiasm for that career with others. And I am so fortunate to have my loving family and their support. This concludes the program, but please don't live. I want you to stay around and enjoy companionship. Thank you all for coming.